So what I have here today is just a pretty typical take on a Mono Blue Devotion deck. This is something that I've been playing since Grand Prix Louisville and have fell in love with it. It has a really good matchup against the majority of the field. You don't really feel like a dog in any particular matchup, so it's got a really good strong curve and strong spells in Thassa in particularly, which is probably the most one of the biggest reasons to play the deck. I'll start over here with the land base. It's 20 islands. You have 5 non-basics, 4 Mutavaults, and a Nykthos. The Nykthos, you don't abuse it a whole lot. There's some situations where you will blow people out with Cyclonic Rift if you curve out well and they don't have removals, or if you're playing against control decks, they don't have D-spheres to take you off Devotion. I was playing 24 lands until about a month ago. All the lists that are top 8ing and winning are on 25. I went ahead and went that direction just out of sake of I wanted to see for myself. I really think 25 lands is correct, just because you can always use your mana, whether you're activating a Bident, pumping a Frostburn Weird, or trying to play 2 spells in 1 turn. There's a lot of situations you're activating Mutavaults, you're making things unblockable with Thassa. There's a lot of mana sinks in the deck. Once I put some thought into that, it was a no-brainer. So I know that part of the deck is correct. Majority of lists will play 4 Judge's Familiars. That's a card that I like. I think it's strong in this deck and in the meta game. But it's one of those things where you're wanting to cut the weakest card from the deck. So that's kind of how I've got down to 3. This is an aggressive deck, and you need to know and take that role majority of the time. So sometimes when I don't have a 1-drop on turn 1 or turn 2, I wonder if that's particularly correct. But like I said, I've played the deck for a long time. We'll get to this in a second, but here on the left is the sideboard, with this line here. So everything else is kind of stock about the list. Majority of lists are playing, 2 Bident, 2 Thassas, some number of this. This card, it was at 3, which I cut for the actual 4th Mutavault. No other lists were ever playing 3, but it's really good in the mid-range matchups when they're trying to assemble Elspeth and assemble the Legion and just big 5-drops, Blood Baron and all these things. You're really time walking them, or if you're overloading it, it's just back-breaking in those sort of situations. But I found that 3 was overdoing it. The only time I wanted 3 was, strangely enough, against the control matchups, because I would end of turn rift them. They would either, it would resolve and I'd untap and win, or they would counterspell it, which the third one, it was easier to find the second copy that really made the dent in them. And I was stealing a lot of games between that and just Mutavault. The Thassa goes a long way in that particular matchup. Your best matchups are, definitely aggressive strategies. Definitely things that Tidebinder Mage has targets for. Mono Red in particular is a pretty good cakewalk for it. We'll go over to the board and you'll see that there's not a whole lot that I have for like an aggressive type strategy. I have another Rift that I do bring in against the mid-range decks, but I don't bring that in against control lists like I was talking about before. I've just found that after board, when I have counterspells, that I can just go a different path. I board in the Bident against control as well, and the Jace 5. This is something atypical in Mono Blue Devotion lists, but I find that it's just, we're taxing their D-spheres a whole lot, so it's another point to attack them with. The negates, sometimes I'll bring them against Mono Black Devotion. I don't know 100% if that's correct, but I've found some spots where that's really good, and I've definitely blown them out when they're counting on a Hero's Downfall or something. The Rapid Hybridization, that almost only comes in against mid-rangey type bigger decks, Mono Black Devotion in particular, but if I were playing against, like a big Boros deck, and I expected a bunch of dragons and racing situations, that would come in. This is for the mirror, and sometimes if it's a small Boros deck, this deck is sometimes weak to Boros Reckoner. If I don't draw some number of this, or I'm not curving out or having unblockable creatures, they can kind of stonewall me. Although I do have an Air Force a lot of games, but sometimes depending on the situation, I'll bring those in against them as well. This card right here is blank. We don't have one, or we didn't want to go dig it up. This is a Dispel. And that's just a really good hard counterspell, one of that when we get into a counterspell war over a detention sphere or something like that in Esper or Blue-White, which are definitely winnable matchups, but you have to play tight and you have to know what lines you're taking. I think the rest of it is just you're trying to curve out, you're playing some of the better spells in the format in Thassa, Bident, Jace, Master of Waves, your top end. And the rest is just, abusing the interactions. There's a lot of synergy there. So I'll let you guys know how it goes after this weekend. I think with the new spoilers, this strategy will get a lot weaker, and I might move on, but I definitely recommend it for the time being.